All right, guys, welcome back to the 307 Project YouTube channel. We got a little bit different style video coming at you today. Usually we're out on the range shooting many of the guns we shoot. You guys that we're reviewing, maybe you watched the series about the best cheap pistol. A lot of that stuff is supplied by our friends here at Rome Gun and Pawn. So if you guys are ever in this area, stop by and check them out. They'll have something that you want, probably have something that you need, and have it at a really good deal. So we appreciate all that y'all do to support us and support the channel. Yeah, y'all are great people, so it means a lot to us. So today we want to kind of dispel some of the myths around buying a gun. So a lot of you guys, or a lot of people that have came to me, they've said, I don't want to go buy this from the local store because it's going to go into this database and then everybody's going to know what I have. And I just don't want them to know that. So I prefer to buy from an individual to avoid that. And from talking to my friends, that doesn't seem to be the case, but I'm not an expert on it. So I want them to elaborate a little bit on what happens if I come in here to buy a Glock 19 from you today. Then what is the process and who is notified and where does the paperwork go and just how does it work?
So first off, this is in Georgia, so I'm going to speak from Georgia perspective, which is most of the country's perspective, but there are states like California and New York who are a lot more strict than we are here. So those states keep like an online registration system. They get the serial numbers, they get everything. In Georgia, you come in and fill out a background check, and we, as the dealer, put your serial number on our form for our logbook purposes. But once we process that transaction, there is no record floating out there of you with that serial number. We keep it on file here in case it ever needs to be traced, like if it's stolen out of your truck or, God forbid, used in some sort of crime somewhere, we have to do a trace on it, and then we give your information over. But until then, it just stays here. If you have a carry permit in Georgia, we get to exempt the background check. So what that means is that we don't have to ask anybody if you're allowed to have it because you've already proven yourself at the courthouse that you can have a gun. If you don't have a carry permit, we have to run it through the system. And when we run it through the system, we put you're buying a handgun, a long gun, or an other, which are things like receivers and frames. We don't put in any sort of serial number or brand, model, make, whatever. And we don't even put in that we actually transferred you the gun. Huh. All they know is we're asking for permission on a background for this type of gun. Because if I put in on a background check that Joe from Alabama wants to buy a handgun, they're going to deny it because you can't buy a handgun out of state. So that's why they want to know those sort of things, not because they want to know what you're buying. They just want to make sure it's legal where we're doing it at.
So it's not really a background check as in, I guess in a sense it is, like, is there any family violence? Are you out of state buying a handgun like you mentioned? Right. So that's the kind of background it's looking for, criminal history that would prevent you. And that's just automated, or is that going to an actual person?
So if you are completely clean, nothing on your background but maybe a speeding ticket, then as far as I understand it, it's completely automatic. So we put you in and it spits out a proceed right off the bat. That probably means that you have nothing on your background. There are quite a few people who have minor things that don't prevent you from owning a gun, like misdemeanor drug charges, DUIs. Their background will turn blue and research for a few minutes. And what that means is that it's sent it to a person to personally review the file to make sure, because if you have a DUI, it's a misdemeanor. It doesn't prevent you. But if you have 3 of them, then you, as far as I know, that turns into a felony. So someone has to review that in person to see, and they do get to make that choice of proceed, delay, or deny.
Okay.
A lot of times in those cases, the person will get delayed for a few days while they further research it, just because once we went to this online system, I know that they got rid of a lot of the workers to do this because it used to be you had to call it in, and so you had to talk to a person every time.
Oh, okay.
That was back probably, 2005, 2008, they switched over. Now you can still call in if you want to, but nobody ever does that. We just put it in the system. And yeah, if you're automatically proceeded, as far as I understand, it's just kind of like an AI switch that you're good, nothing came up. If it turns blue, that means a person is reviewing it.
And so once you get that paperwork filled out, you run the background check. I know now a lot of times, and even in here, the paperwork is on the computer. So does that mean that that's being stored digitally, or what's going on with that? Or even like you go to a store like Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop, it's digital too. A lot of places are going to that digital form. So what's the deal with that?
So there are two different ways that people or that stores do that. One is how we do it here, which is we use the computers to fill out the forms because it prevents us from making errors, like typos. However, once you hit submit, we get the information through our logbook, but it doesn't go anywhere else. So it's once you hit submit, like the memory is gone of you typing that in. So we use it from our logbooks, and we manually copy it into the background check. So I have to physically type it in still. I'm not just importing it into, because if you're importing it into the ATS website, then there's probably somewhere on there that it's getting your information's out. We choose to manually type it in.
So that form digitally is just a measure to save you guys.
Yes.
So that you don't, because you were telling me earlier, Bert, about you guys get hits if you do something wrong on the form, if you get audited. And so that is just a measure to help keep you guys
just a safe check for us.
It's basically like an electronic template for doing it.
Yes.
And so what's going on when you print the paperwork out? Because the reason I ask this, one is because people are really serious about their personal information.
Absolutely.
And that form has some pretty sensitive information that you wouldn't want getting out there. So I think that's why a lot of people are hesitant to fill them out, because they don't know where it's going.
Right.
So once that's printed out and you have the paper copy, it's not stored digitally, then where does that go?
So yeah, like for us, once we do the background, we type it in, we get your info back. Then we choose to print off the forms and keep them on person here, because other than that physical form, if we don't store it in the cloud, nobody has access to that until they do a trace or like a legal purpose to have access to that. And that would be the ATF that would do that. Stores, and I'm not for sure that Cabela's does this, but most major stores, they choose to go the cloud-based storage route. And what that means is once you type in your info there, they are storing it online, because they don't want to print off. I mean, it is a pain to print off 40 forms a day. But I also don't want the liability on us if a hack were to happen or something like that, and everybody's information is out there. So we choose to print it, but it is a pain. But I know a lot of the big box stores aren't going to print off those forms, and they've got plenty of money to buy all that liability insurance. So they store it on the cloud. And again, it's supposed to be secure. I don't 100% trust that. That's why we choose to, because I mean, anything can happen. Our kids' school system got broken into, so we have to deal with all that because they hacked all their information. So, I mean, just, I don't know. It's just got all your personal info on it. So I'm not a fan of the cloud base, but I know that a lot of big places do it.
And the reason for that form is just, should they ever need to track that gun, then they would come in here. And do you guys just show that to anybody, or? So
when they have a whole tracing center for the ATF. So when a gun is stolen out of a truck or whatever, used in a crime, it's a really long process in Georgia. They call the manufacturer of the gun, so they would call Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson's going to say, I sold it to distributor X, Y, and Z. They'll call there, and they'll show them where they sold it to Rome Gun & Pawn for resale. And then they'll call us, and we have to, they'll send us an official request over email usually, and we will have to scan that form and send it back to them. Of who we have to prove that we followed we sold it legally to them, and who we sold it to and their contact info. If we have it. Because, they don't require us to get phone numbers and emails. but if we have it, they want that. And usually it's harmless. Usually they just want to make sure, like if it was stolen, they want to prove that the person reporting it stolen was the owner of it. Because otherwise people just maybe reporting everything.
I remember when we were kids, my dad I think he had sold a shotgun or something, and at some point it was stolen, and years later down the road, they called him up and they said, hey, we have that shotgun that got stole. And he was like, I'd sold that. Like, I guess he could have been like, oh yeah, let me have my shotgun. But, he was honest and said, no, I had sold that gun. And so I guess they did whatever they did with it. But what they would have done in that case would have been traced it down. Like they pulled it up, it was stolen. This is the only known registered person the person it was registered to. Right. And that's who they called by using that process that you just laid out.
And typically your gun stores are your last, like that's where it ends typically, because if you sell it to your buddy or whatever, at that point the paper trail kind of ends. So as far as a trace, they're trying to get as close to where that gun ended up.
And if you have a carry permit, we mentioned that a little bit at the beginning, but if you have a carry permit, you're basically letting your local government vet you to own a gun, and then you're bypassing the background check. Is that right?
So you get carry permits are good for 5 years in Georgia. You'll go in and get your fingerprints done, pictures done, and they will run a pretty in-depth background on you to make sure you can own a gun.
Yeah.
At that point, you can come in here and fill out the background check, and we don't have to. And I know that a lot of like your box stores like Academy and Dunham's and things like that, they require you to still run a background even if you have a carry permit. But it is legal for us to omit that.
Okay.
The actual background process if you have the carry permit.
Okay.
Now if you have a carry permit and something happens, like you get arrested for domestic violence or something to that effect, they are supposed to take it from you.
Okay.
I feel like that maybe doesn't happen
enough,
enough,
sure not,
because I think people fall through the cracks, and obviously people can be accused of something and be totally innocent. 2 weeks later, found like everything dropped.
Yeah, well, maybe they don't have it with them when they're arrested, right?
And so I think that a lot of times that does fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
Of them taking it away, because we see a lot of people that have them, and then they will let it expire, and their background will process longer.
Okay.
When I have to run it, and I'm like, well, you had a carry permit, that's odd, but something could have happened in that 5-year period.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the big concern for people is, one, their sensitive information, and then two, when the government decides they want to come confiscate, that they think that they're going to have all of this information about what you own, how many you've got, where you keep. They think that they're going to know everything, but from what you're telling me, that's just simply not the case, and that's an insurmountable task. Should that even be a thing one day?
It would be super hard if you didn't have a carry permit for the government to know anything about what you own other than just knowing how many background checks were ran on you. So they would know that if you didn't have a carry permit. But if they really wanted to go through it, they would physically have to come to the store, print off logbooks, and then go find those firearms from you. But if you do have a carry permit, nobody knows anything at this point until if obviously, it's been few and far between, but there have been a couple of people who have had a lot of traces ran on them, which usually means that they're buying a gun and selling it to somebody that probably shouldn't have it, and they're figuring out that. So when that does happen, I've saw it a couple of times that they would come to the store, or an ATF agent would be investigating and come to the store to want to know what was sold to that person. But like I said, that's like an extraordinary circumstance of
if you're not
actual crimes happening, not just your everyday person falling along.
To go back to what she's saying, as far as the how many traces or whatever, sometimes they feel like they're doing it innocently because they're just like, I'm just going down here and selling what I have or whatever, but they look at it as if you are operating without a license.
Yeah.
So that can be an issue sometimes.
Yeah, most like you're a firearms dealer. Like, I mean, there's several sites here in Georgia that people use, and there's some juggers on there that will probably sell as many guns as wrong gun.
Yeah,
You know, I
absolutely.
mean, they just turn, and I don't know how they're. But you know, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, there is the conspiracy theorists out there, right, that are worried about those things. But if you're doing what you should be doing, it's really not a big deal anyways.
No.
So, did y'all see? I seen a post on Instagram the other day from Daniel Defense that they are pushing through some bill to take suppressors off the NFA list. Have y'all seen that?
Yeah, so it's passed through the House.
Yeah, I think
it
so.
hasn't passed through the Senate.
Okay.
I doubt it will, but I know our suppressor sales have came to a halt with like the possibility of dropping because nobody wants to pay a $200 tax stamp when it's going to be dropped in a few years, and then it's not like they're going to refund your money. But I don't think it will, just because once the government gets you to pay for something, they're never not going to have to pay for something. But
would that move them to a?
I could see them taking it off NFA, as in like you could come here and buy it, but you would still pay that $200. It's just hard for me to believe that they're going to get rid of that overnight. Just like, oh no, we're not going to take $200.
Yeah, I wouldn't see that either. That'd be like taking taxes away.
Yeah.
Well, that answers all of my questions that you know, that people have asked me and that I have gotten, and just heard people talk in the local redneck community, you know. And so that's really insightful information, and hopefully it clears it up for some of you guys that have been hesitant because you don't know where it's going or who's seeing it or who's getting your information, which some of that is legitimate. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and this was y'all's idea, so it was a really good idea to put that out. I think we covered a good bit and give y'all a little bit of something to chew on and maybe reassure you of some things. These guys are here just telling you the truth with no hidden motives, so you can trust what they're saying. And again, we appreciate y'all's support for 307 Project and for taking the time to do this and share your intelligence on these things. So we will I guess we need to come up with another theme to run some videos for you guys. So
absolutely.
We'll see you guys on the next one. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.